Sal? How you doing?
I mean, after that introduction, I don't know if I can, keep this up the way it's supposed to be. Thank you so much. It's a hard act to follow, Jake. Good to talk to you, my man. Good to be with you. Thanks for asking me to be on.
Of course, I saw you there at the Hyman tournament, walked over, and you were so
Mhm.
nice to me. So I wanted to thank you for
Oh yeah,
taking
of
the
course.
time to talk to me there, and obviously for coming here and jumping on.
You got it, buddy. You got it. Ready to rock and roll with you.
Yeah, let's go. Let's talk some football. I'm really excited to do that. Let's jump into the Bills for a second quickly. I want to talk about the receiver core. I've been
Yeah.
nervous about this since the offseason, like
Mhm.
since the beginning of free agency. We saw Diggs leave, we saw Gabe Davis leave, but they did a pretty solid job in bringing in good receivers as well. Drafted in the second round, first pick of the second round, obviously, Keon Coleman. I like that draft pick. They brought in Curtis Samuel, which I thought was a very underrated move. Do you think they still got it in order to be like a solid receiver core in the league?
Well, it's interesting. You and I are talking literally on the day of final cuts, right? So there's been a lot of wondering who's going to be capped and who's going to not be capped. They only decided to keep five receivers. The two guys that you mentioned, of course, plus Khalil Shakir, who really came on last year, and then Mac Hollins and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who they signed this offseason. Look, I think that if you ask most Bills fans, they would think they would say also they're a little concerned about the receiving core. What they don't have is that high end number one. I think you feel like you got to have one of those in the NFL. That was Stephon Diggs for several years, obviously. He's now with the Houston Texans. What they do have, though, is I think a bunch of guys who really can do a lot of different things. And they've designed this offense to have lots of different options for Josh Allen. But that's where it comes down to, Jake, which is they have Josh Allen. So I think that this team feels that, Josh will elevate receivers and they don't have to have a true alpha number one that's making 25 to $30 million a year. But we'll see. When it comes down to a big 3rd and 6 in the fourth quarter against the Miami Dolphins, like who's your guy? I mean, that will be the test, right? But I think they feel comfortable with what they have, but I certainly feel fans' trepidation about it.
Trust me, we're gonna talk about Josh Allen soon. But I wanted to touch upon like on your point about how now they have a bunch of guys that are good. They don't have that guy like they did in Diggs. But something that always bothered me when Diggs was there and Gabe and Davis was there, I didn't think Davis was used enough. He
Hmm.
was he was way like underrated and he was an amazing number two option, but I feel like they could have given him more attention. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I wonder sometimes the chicken and egg. Is it because Stephon Diggs is there and he's commanding targets and other guys, or is it because, Gabe Davis wasn't necessarily getting open and, he was really good down the field, but he wasn't known as, the best separator on routes and things like that. So, Gabe got a good opportunity. He's in Jacksonville now. The Bills will see him week number 3. They don't have now. Look, I mean, to your point, Diggs and Davis together, 241 targets, right? They're lost. And what people have to realize is the Bills' true number one receiver is actually a tight end. It's Dalton Kincaid. Dalton Kincaid is the guy to me that's going to lead this team in targets. He doesn't play wide receiver. He has a TE next to his name. It's tight end, but I think he's going to be the guy they really rely on in those key situations.
Kind of like what the Ravens have done for a bunch of years now with Mark Andrews.
And what the Chiefs have done with Travis Kelce, especially after, trading and moving on from
100%.
Tyreek Hill.
Totally. I actually I'm gonna jump the gun for a second. I want to talk to you about Bills and Ravens for a second
Hmm.
because I'm a Ravens fan
Uh-oh.
and I'm really excited for Week 4. I think
Yeah,
I think
should
it's the
be.
big week for both teams. Both teams. I think the Bills' big day I think is Week 4 because I think it just like it's like the scale. It shows how good they are. But in my opinion, I'm a Ravens fan. I said I might be biased, but I don't see a way that the Bills can waltz into Baltimore, show up and win and steal that game. I can't imagine it. I think that game is Baltimore's to lose. So tell me, how many other Ravens gonna win by?
Well, it's a good question. Listen, Sean McDermott's done a great job against Lamar Jackson, though.
It's true.
They come to Buffalo in the playoffs in the COVID year, 2020. Really didn't do anything and knocked them out of the game, unfortunately. But, they really couldn't move the ball. They missed a couple field goals too, but they shut them down. I think they scored 3 points in that game. The Bills go to Baltimore a couple of years ago. The Bills win 23-20 in the rain. Bills were down. Bills did a great job against Lamar Jackson. The Bills have a plan against Lamar Jackson. And I think, if you're a Bills fan, you're looking for how can the Bills win that game? Well, it's Sean McDermott scheming against Lamar Jackson, where he's done a really good job of that. And the Bills are, even more athletic now, I think, than they were a couple of years ago with some of the youth that they have on the defensive side. And then, of course, sprinkle in some Josh Allen magic. So, we'll see. I mean, the Ravens are going through changes too. It feels like they want to be a ground and pound team. I mean, and with Derrick Henry there and how they want to run the ball. And I wonder how that's going to fit and what that's going to work. They're an organization I certainly admire and have for a long time. I think the way that they coach and John Harbaugh and what they've been able to do with the success they've had, obviously. But I think the Bills have definitely a chance with Josh Allen and the fact that we know that Sean McDermott understands how to defend against Lamar Jackson, but it won't be easy, that's for sure. And I'm sure the Ravens will be favored, and they deserve to be favored.
I agree with your point that Sean McDermott is amazing at scheming against Lamar Jackson. But you're forgetting one thing, Sal. Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
How in the world is any defensive coordinator, you're a defensive coordinator, you're tasked with something impossible. That impossible thing, you're going to ask anyway, it's stopping Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry at the same time. It's hard enough just one of them. It's going to be crazy. Like, how would you even try to game plan against that?
Well, I would say there's only one football. One of them has to carry it. So that's how you do it. You know that it's going to go someplace. And Derrick Henry averaged what, 4.2 yards a carry last year. I mean, he's got a lot of tread on those tires. I'm actually interested to see if Derrick Henry is going to be able to, continue on and be as successful. He's a beast. There's no doubt about that. But he's going to be 30 years old this year as a running back. He's led the league in carries 4 out of the last 5 years. I mean, this is a lot of wear and tear on him. So I think it's going to be really interesting. So yeah, I mean, hey, football is football. There's only one ball, and somebody's got to carry it, but it's gonna be tough. We'll see. We'll see on week 4.
Speaking of carrying the football effectively, let's go back to the Bills for a second and James Cook. He's an interesting story to me. In college, all 4 years of college, he averaged over 6+ yards per carry each
Mhm.
year. Then he comes into the NFL for his rookie year, and he averages 5.7 yards per carry. That's really, really good. And then last year, people were calling for him to get more usage, more touches. And he went crazy last year with over 1,500 yards. What are you expecting from James this year, and how big of a factor is he going to be on offense?
Well, last year, obviously, James Cook, he was what, 6th in the NFL in rushing yards. He was 4th, in yards from scrimmage. He was 4th in overall rushing yards. And I just think he's such a dynamic player. He's a great, he can be a great receiver out of the backfield. He had some drops last year, and that continued kind of this training camp, but they really like him in that role. They did draft Ray Davis in the 4th round, who the Bills really like, and I think that will take a little bit of a load off of James Cook. Look, James Cook is a sensational runner, but he's also 5'9", 180 or 190. I mean, he's like the smallest starting running back in the NFL. He can't take on the kind of load and the kind of workload and running between the tackles that a guy like Derrick Henry can, right? I mean, he's not built like that. So I think it's gonna be interesting how they use him. He's still the number one guy, but I think that they've done some things here where they're going to try and take a little bit off him and allow Ray Davis to kind of get some work in as well to preserve James Cook for a full season in playoffs.
Love that. Love to hear that. And something that I've always found amazing with James Cook, he came into the league, everyone was talking, they're like, oh, James Cook, yeah, Dalvin's brother, right? He has
You're right.
created such a name for
Yeah,
himself.
that's a great point.
Really impressive.
Now Dalvin is James' brother.
Exactly. Switch the roles.
I love it.
Okay, let's get to Josh Allen right now.
All right.
Dang, the expectations are just always so high when it comes to him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's the full package. He's got everything. He's got the size, the arm strength, the mobility. But after last year's exit, it opened the door for a ton of critics. And I got a feeling this is gonna be his year. What have you seen from Josh in training camp so far? And tell me why I'm right.
Well, I think that it's set up for him to really be, he's never won an MVP, right? And it's set up this year where if he has the kind of season he's had the last few years, he should be the MVP considering the cast around him. No more Stephon Diggs, no more Gabe Davis. They've had changes. If he can put up those kinds of numbers with this group, and I'm not trying to down the group, but as you said, there's concern, and there's no real top level wide receiver. I think Josh Allen would have a great look at MVP this year. So that could be his year if you want to, put it that way. But the other part about it is Josh as the leader. There's been a lot of talk made about, his leadership, stepping up because Josh has never had to be the big leader on a team that had Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer and Mitch Morse and Saran Neal and Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. And, now I think with all those guys gone, it's time for Josh to be the leader of the group and say, and hey, he's the starting point. What does that mean though, right? Does that mean he has to get on guys a little bit more? I don't know. I just think it means that he's got to take a little bit more ownership of this team because he had so many guys around him that he could kind of just fit in and be one of the guys and play football. And I think that's going to be where we're going to watch Josh a lot this year is how that leadership takes shape because I mean, Jake, he has one receiver, one on this entire team that caught a pass from him last year, and that's Khalil Shakir. Everybody else is brand new, and I think you get those guys in there. They want to play with Josh Allen, but now it's time for Josh Allen to make sure that he is the guy in charge and understanding. And this is Joe Brady always says, it's not my offense, it's Josh Allen's offense, right? This is the guy that they're giving a lot of ownership to.
I love that you brought up the leadership and everything, but I want to talk about another aspect for a second, and that's just how much he puts his body on the line. It's interesting because so many times he just goes and he could slide, but he goes for those extra yards, he pushes, and obviously he's so big that he gets them. But if I was a Bills fan, I'd be so nervous every time he runs. I'd be screaming, slide, slide. I'm so scared about injuries. You see it with quarterbacks throughout the league now. Just are you expecting Josh this upcoming year to keep grinding for those extra yards or for him to understand that I got to slide, I got to get down?
I will never, ever um, doubt that Josh Allen's going to put his body in harm's way a little too many times because that's just who he is. He's going to do that. That's what you get with Josh Allen. I think even last year he started to do that a little bit better. He started to understand a little bit more to slide to get out of bounds. But even then, there were times where he wanted to gain those extra yards. Josh has to understand there's a difference between the second quarter of week 2 and a big fourth quarter week 16 third down that he needs, right? That's when you got to do something like that. That's in Josh's DNA though, Jake. I mean, I always say, like, if you take that away from Josh Allen, you're kind of taking away what Josh Allen does best, which is his fearlessness and his ability and willingness to do a lot of things that other people aren't with his body. No, nobody wants to see it. You're right. Every Bills fan just holds their breath when that happens. The fact is, though, Josh Allen's really been hurt twice in his career, and both happened in the pocket, not running. And that's where a lot of quarterbacks get hurt. Now, I will say, I think last year he did come out. He did have a play last year. He fell on his shoulder when he was running, when he was pushed out of bounds or when he tackled out of bounds. But you're never going to take that out of Josh Allen. You can only ask him to kind of adjust his style a little bit here and there. But he's a guy that's going to do whatever it takes to win. And I think given the two, Bills fans would rather have that than him to play conservative.
100%. Yeah, they in the back of their mind, they want him to be very aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk to you. Last question. I just want to talk to you about the offseason for a second. Some of the big moves that we saw. We saw Kirk Cousins go to Atlanta for the Falcons. We saw Diggs obviously go to the Texans. Keenan Allen to the Bears. Saquon Barkley to Philadelphia. Russell Wilson and Justin Fields to the Steelers, and so many more. Your opinion, what do you think was the biggest move in the offseason?
Biggest move in the offseason. Oh boy, you're catching me. I guess it would be Barkley. That's a division shaper, right? Look, I don't think the Giants, even with Barkley, are necessarily challenging the Eagles for the division. But here you have a franchise running back it was just the number 2, number 3, whatever it was, 5 pick. He was top 5 pick in the draft just a few years ago. And, him going to a division rival like that is just, I think, massive. So to me, from that standpoint, I don't know, like I said, if that's going to be something that necessarily, changes how they finish in the division. I don't think it does, but I do think that's a massive move. And then the other one I think is, something that kind of goes back a year, which is, the Bears, they get the number 1 pick because of the trade they make, in Houston and Carolina and all these things that happened a few years ago. And now Caleb Williams enters as Caleb Williams has probably the greatest setup ever for a rookie quarterback entering this league with Roma Dunze and Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. And DeAndre Swift and Cole Kmet. Look what this guy has and he's walking into. So I just think that move there, taking him at number 1 when it wasn't even originally their draft pick, I think that's a massive move too.
Both are huge moves. Sal, thank you so much for taking your valuable time to jump on Jake's Takes with me today. Did you enjoy your time with me?
Absolutely, buddy. Thank you. Thanks for asking me. It was really fun meeting you, and great job on this, and best of luck.
Of course, man. Thank you so much.